In 1508, Michelangelo was the most famous artist in the world, and he was furious. He had just been ordered to abandon his greatest project, a massive marble tomb that would have cemented his legacy forever, and travel to Rome to paint a ceiling. He didn't want to paint. He was a sculptor. He believed painting was beneath him. The man who would create the most celebrated ceiling in human history began that project in rage, convinced he was being set up to fail. But to understand why Michelangelo was the way he was, volcanic, obsessive, impossible, you need to walk through the city that made him. We've used advanced artificial intelligence to reconstruct Florence exactly as Michelangelo saw it in 1508. The city that broke him, built him, and sent him into the world like a weapon. And Michelangelo was its most dangerous creation. Florence in 1508 was not the same city Leonardo had left. The Medici had been expelled, returned, exiled again, and were now clawing their way back to power through alliances, assassinations, and gold. The streets carried a tension that hadn't existed a generation earlier. Our AI reconstruction shows you what Michelangelo's eyes recorded walking through Florence in those years, a city simultaneously producing the most sublime art in history and tearing itself apart politically. This was not just a city, it was a machine. The Piazza della Signoria was the beating heart of this tension. On one side, the Palazzo Vecchio, the fortress of Republican government, its tower rising like a declaration of civic pride. On the other, the memory of Savonarola, the fanatical monk who had ruled Florence through terror just a decade earlier, burning books, paintings, and mirrors in the bonfire of the vanities, before being burned himself in that same piazza. Michelangelo had witnessed all of it. As a young man, he had attended Savonarola's sermons. The monk's voice haunted him for the rest of his life. Our reconstruction strips away the centuries to show you the narrow streets of the Oltrarno district where he worked, the smell of marble dust and river mud, the sound of chisels on stone echoing between stone buildings. Every statue, every fresco, every chapel was a theological argument made visible. And Michelangelo understood that better than anyone. Michelangelo Buonarroti was born in 1475, but the city claimed him almost immediately. At 13, his father reluctantly placed him in the workshop of Domenico Ghirlandaio, the most sought-after painter in Florence. It was a humiliation his father never quite forgave. But Lorenzo de' Medici noticed something in the boy that stopped him cold. Michelangelo was not just talented. He was operating on a different level entirely, one that even the masters around him could not fully explain. Lorenzo invited him to live in the Medici palace, to study the collection of ancient Greek and Roman sculptures in the Medici gardens. For a boy from a minor family, this was extraordinary. For Florence, it was an investment. Our reconstruction shows you the Medici sculpture garden, a space that no longer exists, but that our AI has rebuilt from historical records. Imagine a walled garden filled with ancient marble fragments collected from across the Roman world. Young Michelangelo moved through this space every day, studying how Roman sculptors had solved the problem of rendering muscle, weight, and emotion in stone. He was not copying them. He was consuming them, dismantling them in his mind, and rebuilding them as something entirely his own. Lorenzo died in 1492. Michelangelo was 17. He would later say that he never fully recovered from that loss. Florence in the 1490s and early 1500s was a city that demanded greatness as a condition of existence. Our AI reconstruction takes you inside the competitive atmosphere of Florentine artistic life, and it was brutal. Artists competed for commissions from the church, from merchant families, from the government. Reputation was everything. A single failed commission could end a career. Florence didn't produce artists, it engineered them. Michelangelo understood this pressure and responded to it by making himself impossible to surpass. The Pietà, completed in Rome in 1499, showed a Mary holding the dead Christ with a tenderness and anatomical perfection that left viewers speechless. He was 24 years old. Then came the David. Our reconstruction shows you the moment in 1504 when the David was installed in the Piazza della Signoria, the same square where Savonarola had burned art and where political executions had taken place. The statue stood 5 meters tall, carved from a single block of marble that 2 other sculptors had already abandoned as unworkable. Michelangelo had produced something that made every other sculpture in Florence look timid. To him, the David was not a triumph, it was a baseline. The question was always what came next. In 1505, Pope Julius II summoned Michelangelo to Rome with a commission for a massive marble tomb. Michelangelo spent months in the marble quarries of Carrara, personally selecting the blocks and obsessing over the quality of the stone. Then Julius changed his mind. Instead, Michelangelo was ordered to paint the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. He protested loudly. He was a sculptor, not a painter. He had enemies in Rome who had suggested the commission specifically, hoping he would fail publicly. Our reconstruction shows you what that ceiling looked like before Michelangelo touched it. A simple blue field with gold stars. Then we showed you what Florence had built inside him. A man constitutionally incapable of doing anything at less than full force. He dismissed the assistants he had brought from Florence, convinced they were not good enough. He worked alone, in secret, for 4 years. Florence had given him the theology, the anatomy, the competitive fury, and the absolute refusal to accept limitation. Rome gave him the ceiling, but the Sistine Chapel was built entirely from what Florence had put inside him. Michelangelo lived until 1564, 88 years old. He outlived Leonardo, Raphael, every major artist of his generation. He kept working until the final weeks of his life, hammer and chisel in hand, still trying to finish a Pietà for his own tomb. Florence never fully let him go. He returned repeatedly throughout his life to walk the same streets he had walked as a boy. In his letters, he wrote about Florence with a mixture of love and fury that never resolved. The city had demanded everything from him. And it had never been enough, because Florence had taught him that enough was not a concept that applied to him. Our reconstruction ends in the Piazza della Signoria at dusk, the David standing in its original position, Brunelleschi's dome visible above the rooftops. As the light fades, we are left with a question. What happens when an entire civilization decides that art is the highest form of human achievement and finds the one person capable of proving it? Michelangelo did not choose Florence. Florence chose him. It took him at 13, filled him with theology and marble and competitive fury, and sent him into the world with standards so impossibly high that he spent the rest of his life trying to meet them. If this reconstruction brought 1508 Florence to life for you, our next video goes back to 1482 to walk through the city that inspired Botticelli, the Florence of hidden symbols and Medici secrets. That video is already on your screen. We will see you there.